Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris.
And today is a hot topic.
That's right, we are talking about alcohol.
This is one that I like alcohol, but deep down, you know it's probably not that good for you.
Yeah, we've been teasing this one for a while. We've had members request this one, so we are excited to dive into it. We know that alcohol is a part of the sort of common post-race and social experience that a lot of people have. And it's synonymous with unwinding. So, of course, everybody, especially in these stressful times, wants to unwind. But the real impacts of a post-run beer or glass of wine, not so great, maybe.
So if you're an athlete trying to get faster, get better, chances are you are because you're listening to Coach Quip, right? Alcohol might actually be silently holding you back. So in this episode 186, we're breaking down exactly how alcohol affects your running and your training, your speed and your recovery, and all of those post-training and post-race gains that we want to get after. So it's hopefully going to change the way that you think about drinking if you want to maximize your athletic potential. We're not necessarily going to tell you to 100% stop. We are not keepers of your soul here, but we will help you come up with what is right for you moving forward.
Yeah, so stick around for ways that you can, if you choose to, drink safely and still be able to perform. But first, let's talk about the short-term and long-term impacts of alcohol on athletes in both the ways that it impacts your performance and your recovery.
So short-term, some of these are obvious, right? Even one or two drinks, we know, can slow down your reaction time, right? This is why drunk driving is a thing, right? Something happens and you can't react fast enough. It's going to mess with your coordination and it absolutely can throw off your balance. So we definitely do not recommend drinking before you're running trails or racing or doing any type of speed work, really.
Yeah, maybe just don't drink before a workout is a good rule.
Right. I mean, there are way better things that you can ingest that will maximize your performance and not hinder it. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little side note here. Have you ever seen or done a beer mile?
I hate the beer mile.
I also hate the beer mile.
I am vehemently opposed to the beer mile. My athletes know this.
Yeah. Okay. So for those of you listening that don't know what a beer mile is an event, usually a renegade event, where people will drink an entire can of beer and then run a lap on the track and continue to do that until they have done a mile, in which they can consume either 4 or 5 cans of beer in the course of 1 mile. It is incredibly dangerous. And when I was in New York, my tri club would do this annually as like a little special event. And people actually loved it. Like, some of the people loved it. I felt that it was a ridiculous thing, so I went to take photos. I was still there and witnessed it, but wow, I have never seen people so intoxicated.
Oh, really? That fast?
That fast, because you have to think, people are putting out a lot of effort in their body because they are quickly trying to run. And if you consume 4 cans of beer in a matter of 10, 15 minutes,
that's a lot.
By the time we were walking back to the train, people were disasters. It was one of the scariest things I've seen in terms of how quickly alcohol can impact people.
Especially these our little runners, right? We talk about how much alcohol you ingest relative to your body size. Yeah, that's not in their favor.
Yeah. So definitely don't recommend drinking and running or doing any physical activity at the same time. But we know alcohol has short-term impacts on reaction coordination and balance, like you said. But they also might not directly impact you in running if you're not drinking right before a run, right? So what are some of those other short-term impacts that you might experience?
First off, and I think most of us know this, but alcohol is in fact a diuretic, right? It means that it dehydrates you faster. This is why you wake up with a headache, right? When you haven't had enough water or you had too many drinks or both. All of those things are going to set you up for cramps and fatigue and just being sluggish in general, especially if we're going out in hot weather, right? Where we really need to be a little bit more hydrated heading into training or racing.
Yeah, so if you know that, if you ever drank and then tried to hit a workout the next morning, you probably already know that you had higher heart rate, lower energy, and then your workout just feels harder.
Yeah, like you're moving through mud.
Yeah.
I mean, the good news is that the diuretic effect is temporary and it typically occurs at peak 1 to 2 hours after consumption. But the effects of dehydration stack, right? We know that being dehydrated, it can take you days to come back from. So if you get yourself in a pickle, Ooh, you better periodize that pickle.
Pickled juice would probably be good to come back from.
Right. Yes, definitely.
But we know that for that reason that you just said, if you are having drinks on a Thursday or Friday night and you have a Saturday or Sunday long run or long ride, you could potentially feel the effects of that dehydration stacking when you hit that workout, even 1, 2, 3 days later, like you said.
Yeah.
And here at Edge, we have charts in our bathroom about dehydration levels based on how your pee looks.
I love them.
They're fantastic. They're a really good addition. So you definitely want to monitor that. I use a Whoop. Whoop has really great tracking for their members through their journals. And so they've done a couple of studies about alcohol use for athletes. And this isn't specific to runners, but anybody who uses a Whoop. And they allowed their members to track alcohol consumption over time and found some really, really interesting statistics. So they found that resting heart rate increases an average of 1.3 beats per minute per drink that a person has.
Per drink?
This is per drink.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That is a serious reason to not stack drinks.
Yeah. HRV.
I didn't realize that was per drink.
Per drink, yeah.
Holy hell.
So your heart rate variability, or your HRV that a lot of people track on their watches, decreases by an average of 2.4 ms. I'm not really sure what the ms, I'm not really sure how that equates to how you feel or your performance, but that's a significant drop. So when you're dropping 2.5 points per drink, that's significant.
So that one's per drink
All
too?
All of these, yeah.
Oh my goodness. And the last one is the craziest one.
Yeah, so your recovery score decreases by 4.2% per drink.
That is, if you have ever thought, let me do my 20 miler, and then I'm going to have this bottle of wine. That alone,
yeah.
All of the work that you're doing is being negated. Not all of it. That's a little bit fatalistic, but that is a staggering stat. And for me, the 4%, even if that was not per drink, that is a lot of wasted training.
With that in mind, as you just mentioned, are we wasting our training if we're drinking to celebrate or to unwind after we do so? Let's talk about recovery.
Oh, we are also sitting in a business that is steeped in recovery, right? You all know, we've said this a million times, fitness only actualizes through the recovery phase. So you do the work. It's really honestly what happens after that work that decides how it's going to be used. So your muscles obviously need to rebuild, they need to grow, your endurance mechanisms need to fortify. So what happens when we add alcohol into the mix, right? First up, alcohol slows down protein synthesis, which means you're going to have less repair, you're going to have less strength gain, and longer recovery time. So even if you have that protein shake and you follow the guidelines of what to do exactly after your training session, you still aren't going to be building back as well as you would have without alcohol in your body.
Yeah, alcohol also wrecks your sleep quality, and we know that sleep is our number one recovery tool. So while alcohol can help you fall asleep quicker,
it totally does.
Yeah,
100% it does.
It is actually worse sleep. So you might fall asleep faster, but your REM sleep and your deep sleep actually take a huge hit if you have alcohol before bed.
This is one of the ways that I negotiate with myself. Even last night, I am not training for anything big. I'm doing very minimal training right now. Life load is high, so training load is low, but consistent. And I had the thought, I was like, wow, could you really use a glass of wine? And then I thought, yeah, but I'm going to fall asleep faster, and I've already been sleeping terrible. And then I know I'm also not going to feel as good today, and I have a very stacked day. So it's is it worth it for me to feel good for an hour and fall asleep faster and then have 2 a.m. to 5 p.m. of the next day feel like crap? No. Right. And looking at it that way holistically does help me ultimately make some better decisions.
So this is really important, right? You're thinking, it's the end of the day, you're thinking, I want to unwind, and you're thinking, okay, I might feel good for an hour, but you have bedtime within your view, right? So timing of when you drink is actually really important. It has a real impact on how you'll feel the next day and your sleep as well. And I know in the past they've said you can process 1 drink per hour.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So, but the way that most people drink is not like that.
No,
right?
It's not.
Most people are not having a 4-ounce glass of wine.
No.
Or a single 1-ounce shot, right?
Why have that?
Yeah. Right. So given the slow processing time of alcohol, the longer that you have between the time that you drink and bedtime, the quicker you will recover.
That makes sense.
So
we're making a case for day drinking, which I am terrible at.
So I guess, yes, we're kind of making a case for day drinking, I guess. But like, all right, so here's more statistics from Whoop. Okay, so if you have a drink between 4 to 9 hours before bed, so we're talking like dinner time or before, right, you will see an average recovery drop of just 1%.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so you have that time for your body to process and still be in a better place. Maybe not completely, free and clear, but in a better place before bed.
Yeah.
If you have a drink between 4 hours and 1 hour before bedtime, we see an average recovery drop of 3%.
And this makes perfect sense because it's messing with your sleep, right? And you recover the most during your sleep phases. So if you interrupt that, your recovery score is going to go to hell. So basically, the more time you give your body to process alcohol, the better your recovery will be. This is also making the case for mimosas. Not really, don't do it, but it is interesting to think about backing that time up differently.
Right, and so it is kind of a case for brunch.
Yeah.
Right. All right, let's talk about some of the long-term effects of alcohol. So over time, regular alcohol use can lead to decreased aerobic capacity, muscle strength, decreased metabolism, and inflammation levels. And I think for athletes, this last one of inflammation levels is really important because
you can feel it too. You just feel like garbage.
Yeah, and you're stacking that onto what you're already, the trauma that you're already giving your body from whatever your sport is, right? So if you're training hard, you're already managing certain levels of inflammation, and our job in recovery is to get those to go down so that we can continue to train. If you are adding alcohol on, you are putting yourself at a huge disadvantage in terms of those 4 things.
So can athletes actually find balance in all of this, right? You don't have to go drinking completely, but we know that plenty of athletes enjoy alcohol in moderation and maybe put it in really smart places. But the key is really that. It's being strategic with when you partake.
Yeah, we have to be strategic because one of the other negative impacts of consuming alcohol is that it messes with our ability to keep up with our boundaries and our habits.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think
it's like a giant eraser.
Yeah, it becomes easier to make poor nutritional decisions or decisions about your sleep and recovery or to skip runs and workouts because you don't feel well. So for finding that balance. So let's go through a list of things that people should do to find that balance. So if you are an athlete who is looking at your relationship with alcohol and thinking, okay, can I still have a drink? The answer is yes.
But however.
And
first step would be if you have a hard workout coming up the next day, just avoid drinking the day before, right? And hard, I would define as inclines, tempo, speed, long. Any of those elements present, just avoid drinking the night before. That is going to set you up for not the most success. Also, we haven't talked about this, but alcohol absolutely messes with mental health too. I know that I absolutely, especially now in my 40s, have anxiety, right? Where I have a little bit higher level of anxiety if I do have a drink or two the night before. We're already probably nervous about the speed run, right? Because running hard is still scary, right? It's not like you just show up and you have no fear about something, you're scared of it. We turn up the notch on that as well when we have alcohol the day before. So just maybe skip that one.
Yeah, next up is to match your drinks with water. This is a strategy that people have. If you have one drink, have a glass of water, and then consider if you want another drink, just because we know, as we said, it's a diuretic. We want to offset some of that dehydration.
Next up, you saw this one coming. It's to pace yourself. Your body's liver, as Coach Chris has said, is able to process about 1 standard serving of alcohol per hour. So every additional one is going to accumulate in your body, and it's going to take time to be able to process and metabolize it out. So an easy fix for me is to merge this one with the water one. It's 5 p.m., you have a glass of wine. At 5:30, you have water. If you want another glass of wine at 6 p.m., granted we're within 4 hours of sleep, so maybe not, but at least we are still honoring that 1 an hour cadence.
Yeah, the next up is kind of into the mental health piece that you had mentioned, but be honest about your drinking. Sometimes we just need to take a moment to have a self-assessment, to check in with ourselves to see, am I drinking to celebrate or because I really want to, or is it out of habit?
Yeah.
And have you developed a habit where your reward mechanism for reaching the end of your workday is to reach for something to drink? And then you might want to reevaluate that.
And last, try cutting it out, right? This is where things like Sober October and Dry January are very, very popular. If you track it out for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, think about how your recovery is different, how you're sleeping, is your performance different? I love the idea of doing it for 4 weeks. If you have a traditional 3 build, 1 recovery, cycle, you are going to be able to get some really great data as to how it's going. We've seen athletes have really, really big success and a lot of aha moments in being able to do that. And I think it's also less scary to be like, okay, if we cut it out, doesn't mean it always has to be cut out, but it does mean, wow, I can really nail tempo on Tuesday mornings at 5:30 in the morning if I'm not still kind of struggling from a Sunday day drinking session.
So if you're looking to make some changes to your relationship with alcohol, you are not alone. I think we have seen a lot of people use the last 2 years to really check in on how they've been consuming alcohol and reevaluate what they want their future with it to look like. I think we are in a pretty good place right now. Like, we have more non-alcoholic options.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that makes going out socially easier to be around other people. Doesn't feel like you're being left out. And then we also have just seen a lot more acceptance towards more sober lifestyle, or what do they call, like,
Sober curious?
Sober curious, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Sober curious or fully sober lifestyle. I think just there used to be so much stigma around, like, why aren't you drinking at a party?
And now it's much more accepted.
And now, yeah, exactly. So there are definitely people out there that you could be in community with if you were looking to drink less or not drink at all.
Or if you're an athlete, we also have an NA chat in our WhatsApp chat collection.
Awesome.
And people I need to actually put some of my favorite hop waters in there because there's a lot out there. And I love this because as athletes, especially if it's like an obvious phase for the city that you're in, like for Chicago Marathon, we can always say, oh, I have a long run, or oh, I have a speed run tomorrow. And people just accept it because they know you're chasing something big, and you're not going to get flack about it, which is great. At the end of the day, you're an athlete, right? Your body is your engine. What you fuel with it matters. Just as we say to you, you cannot fuel or rebuild your body on potato chips, you also cannot fuel and refuel your body on toxins and poison, i.e., unfortunately, alcohol.
So if you're serious about your performance, your relationship with alcohol deserves a second look. Do you have a story or experience about alcohol and running? We would love to hear it. So go ahead and drop a comment in the chat or in the comment section. Hit like, subscribe, and if this was helpful, send it to your run crew. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Mend. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.